Hello, GSD. This is Shanan Steere again. I wanted to introduce you today to one of the rock stars that I've known for a very long time, Melanie Kennemann, out of the Austin, Texas Market Center. And Mel, I want to talk to you today about leadership, attracting talent, and all of the magnificent things you've done in your career. First, though, I'd like you to start by telling us about your real estate career.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. It's always great to spend time with my favorite lovely lady Shanan here. So I'm happy to do that. So I started my career back in 2006 in real estate. My background had been running film sets, and I had literally just moved back from Europe after running, film sets in Germany. And it was so funny because my limiting belief growing up was always languages, learning other languages. I'd always been a natural leader, but I always said I was not the language person. So it's funny how life shows up. So I go to Germany and at 26 years old have to learn a new language. So when I moved back to the States, got into real estate in 2006, I said, it's just like learning another language. And I joined Keller Williams as a new agent. We were in the Reno, Nevada area because my mom was a retiring principal there. My sister was there, and got my license, joined Keller Williams, and the market completely crashed. So I learned short sales, foreclosures. Yeah. 65%. Yeah. Everybody's like, why did you get your license? And I said, well, you know what are my options? I don't want to go work on movies anymore. I've got these two little boys. And honestly, I didn't know any better. And we became #1 in our city during that time. And I became a team leader 10 months later. Because when I joined Keller Williams, I thought, you know what, leading this team is in my future. And the owner approached me and he said, how about now? And I was like, I'm just learning. And long story short, did that for 3.5 years in Reno, took us to #1 in our city, #1 in our region, number 21, all of Keller Williams. And we were one of the hardest hit markets in the country. And then I moved to Austin 10.5 years ago. It'll be 11 years already in January. And I took over the flagship office where Keller Williams began with my partner, Diane Johnson. Her and I led that for 9.5 years. And then COVID happened. And I actually had become the operating partner, which is the voice of the owners, right, for the North, where I am now, 4 years ago. And so COVID hit and Gary said, we're going to do this citywide reinvention. And Melanie, I want you to go full-time North. So since January 1st of 2020, middle of COVID, I switched offices to relaunch this one. And here I am with you today.
So when you look at a new challenge, like going in such trying times and relaunching an office, like what was your mindset going into that challenge?
First, my mindset is, do I really have to do this? I did not see that coming at all. Like literally I was turning 50 that month, it was June of 2020 and I was getting ready for my trip to Tahoe. And then, first week of June, Gary has this conversation with me that, and it was like, look. And so I looked at that, and it's funny, I had the longest discussion with my husband about it. And my husband said, this is perfect. This is exactly what you need. You need that next challenge. And so he helped me reframe that because, I relaunched Reno, right? Mm-hmm. Moved to Austin, and Diane and I really relaunched the original Keller Williams office, broke every record in the company. And so honestly, what else would I have to do there? Right. And so I looked at that and I thought, well, you're so right. And so I reframed it because when I was coming to Austin, the reason I chose Austin, because I could have gone wherever I wanted, right? Because I had a proven track record. I said, I want to help put KW back on the map in Austin. And I want to work closer to Gary Keller. What I didn't realize is that this part of my journey would happen. I thought I'd be done after the Southwest Market Center. But what I realized is I wasn't done, and that this actually was my level of mastery. And I have had so many challenges this last year because moving offices. Now I have the advantage is I knew a lot of the agents because I was already operating partner, and I'd already built so many relationships in Austin because I'd been here so long. And yet, it wasn't until I got in the trenches, even though I'd been the operating partner, until I got in the trenches as the executive team leader and looked at everything and uncovered things, did I reveal how much work there was to be done. And so it was a bit overwhelming at the beginning, but the reframing of here's where I can really make an impact is what got me excited to say yes to that opportunity. So now I fast forward to today. Our retentions, our net's up 223%. We're breaking every record in category after category. And I'm so proud because I see exactly why I was asked to do this.
So how does your brain chunk things down when you have that big of an overwhelming task versus staying in overwhelm, or even worse, staying in complacency, which you probably were pretty close to before Gary brought up the challenge?
Oh, most definitely.
How does your brain chunk it down?
You know, that's a really great question. You know, you think about the overwhelm, and I call it, when I'm feeling overwhelmed, because I had a lot of emotion around that, because there was a lot of grieving to leave a market center you'd led for 9.5 years. So it broke my heart a little bit. And then yet I saw how important that was for my personal growth, because it made it a challenge for me again. So what I did is, when I was feeling this overwhelm and I said, well, what can I control? I literally broke it down. It was like E to P, E to P, E to P. And I'm highly entrepreneurial, right? So I can get pretty far with my own given talents, right? But I realized that can only get me so far. So I was much more purposeful moving into that. And I said, okay, what can I control? What can I control? And so what I did is I assessed all my team at the North, and I said, who are my weakest links? Right? Who are my weakest links on this team that I can get rid of? Because if I can fix the biggest problem, then I can really focus on the stuff that I need to do. So I chunked it down by saying, okay, what problem is, like, who's got the arm cut off that's going to bleed to death? And what are all the little scrapes that'll, can just hold on a second? And we'll get to that later. And I literally went by team member and was really clear to designate 2 people. And by moving them out of those roles and moving into where, like, creating the vision, I think is another thing too, is you have to be very clear. Don't judge your future by what's right in front of you. Don't dumb your vision down for the people around you. Instead, you got to lift them up to where you go. So I had to get a lot of clarity and a lot of chunking down. Okay, who are my biggest problems? How do I solve that? And then how do I level up? How do I level the thinking up from the people? And it's like, what's the saying they say? First they laugh at you, then they talk about you, whatever, and then they join you. Mm-hmm. It was that kind of thing. And I'm like, so the E to P for me was like, Melanie, you recognize this. Anytime something's getting hard or you're getting frustrated, you're missing a person or a system, right? Yep. My whole life. So for me, when I said that E to P, I was like, it was quite obvious there were 2 people on that team that needed to not be on the team. And it was a very, very interesting conversation. I did the whole, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how great do you think you are in this? And I picked all the things that I thought mattered in that role. And this person would, like, rank himself a little higher in each category. And finally, we got to the one with communication with the agents, which for me is a non-negotiable. Like, if you're in a market center, like, communication with agents. And he'd given himself a number. And I said, well, really? You give yourself a 7? I'm like, well, I'd give you like a 4. And here's why. And then I said to the question, I said, do you even like this job? Yeah. And I gave him permission to tell me he was miserable and it was not a fit. And so he got to exit with grace. And he told our whole staff that I had the best conversation with Melanie, because I gave him permission and grace to exit with, right? So we found somebody else who was much higher level. He stayed and trained the guy. It was a beautiful thing. But it was how do I chunk it down to what's the loudest screaming, problem right now that we can quiet and resolve, and then we can get to everything else, because not everything is equal. Now, they're all important, but they're not all equal. They're not all, again, the arms cut off and bleeding and you're going to die, right? It's not everything is ER, right? Some things are cosmetic surgery that needs to happen. Some things are preventative that you need to change the supplements. Some things are other things, but very few things are really, like, if you don't stop that bleeding, people will walk out the door.
So here's what I just heard. You're not afraid of conflict.
No.
How many people in this business who lead teams or lead offices or are part of teams are so scared of conflict that it keeps them from moving past and actually hitting their, what is their potential, right? Like, what are they capable of?
Right.
And what would you tell somebody when they're, because I guarantee you people are watching this right now and they're going, oh my God, I would never be able to do that. I would never be able to go have that conversation because I'd be scared to death that they would just, walk out or do whatever. Yeah. And yet, because you went in and said, look, I want to partner with you and kind of meet the conflict halfway, you calmed it down, right? What would you tell people about being okay with conflict?
It's like the one of my favorite books of all time is Fierce Conversations, right? That I read early on as a leader. And I don't know if it's because I ran movie sets and I work with actors, directors, whatever, but I've always, you can't please people all the time. And actually you're doing a disservice. So when I read Susan Scott and I got to listen to her at one of the events, and I heard her say, the relationship is the conversation. It's the conversations you have and the conversations you don't have. It's the missing conversation, right? And so when I learned the whole art of this class called career visioning and, how to stay long-term in business with people, and I found that one conversation about, when they get to rate themselves and then you get to chime into that, like treat everyone with integrity, treat everyone with respect. There's a right way to do things. And the fact of the matter is, if you're not going to address it, the people that suffer, number one, is that person, because they know they're failing, or they don't, because number two, failing is you and you're not feeling good. And then it's what's the impact? What's the cost that person is costing me by staying in business with them? And what is the rest of my team looking at me and thinking about me if I don't address it? Because you teach people how to treat you, as we talk about, right? And so by role modeling, that's the way that we do things here. Is we're going to have a conversation, and it's always with integrity. And the other person, it was the same kind of thing, but this other person, I did not go as like self-discovery. Like they did not see that they were the problem. And yet we set them up for success to find the new thing. You have to have that conflict resolution. Like it's funny, people don't like conflict, but do they like feeling in conflict all the time?
No.
Because if you don't deal with it, then you're in conflict all the time. And that's worse than a conflict conversation. And a conflict conversation, Shanan, my dad is like pretty cool. My dad's an attorney in LA. And my parents are divorced and my mom's a principal. So I've always been into education, everything. But so when I got to visit my dad in LA, it was 100% focus time, which is a gift. I didn't like growing up divorced, but that's the gift in it all, right? So I'd go visit my dad in LA, and every morning I'd have to wait for him to do his meditation and Tai Chi every morning. And I would just watch him do it. And I had to learn that. And I'm like, wow, what a great role model. Because my mom's totally opposite. She's the principal, for low income, and she's out there making a difference. So I learned lots of lessons from both of them. But I went to watch him do his martial arts in Aikido. Are you familiar with Aikido at all? Okay. So the art of Aikido is one of my favorite lessons I learned as a kid. I learned this. And what my father told me is, he's like, watch how we, challenge each other. And, my boys grew up doing Taekwondo, which is a lot of, kicks, and karate is a lot of, two people coming at each other. Here's what's different about Aikido. When your opponent approaches you with a bunch of energy, what do? You turn to the side, you take that energy, and then you bring it back. So think about a conflict situation, right? Somebody's coming at you. And here, the first question I would have for people that have a problem with conflict is, what's their definition of conflict? For me, it's just finding a solution. I just see that as I'm getting this taken care of. I'm standing up as a leader to get this taken care of. But if you come at somebody, what do you expect to get out of that, right? And if someone comes at you, if you go back at them, you're going to have this. But if someone comes at you and you step aside and you say, well, let's take a look at that. What I'm hearing you say is you're really upset. And we have two options. Number one, you can either, let's take a breath here and calm down and have a great conversation, or let's schedule another time. But when you're coming to somebody because you have something you have to solve, like I take that mindset of Aikido, of like everything that person has brought like negative conflict. And I'm going to take that, I'm going to think about it, I'm going to articulate that right back at them. And I'm going to ask them to rate how they see themselves. And I'm going to open up that conversation. And you walk out of there feeling good, both of you. If you do this right, you walk out of there feeling good, both of you. And so if you're doing it right, that's what happens. If you're doing it wrong, you have some work to do still.
So what I just heard you say is, please don't live in conflict, because it's going to affect your gut and your health and everything else. And you're probably just one or two questions away from getting the solution.
Exactly.
Okay. So I want to talk about Talent Scout, because I know you're one of the best talent scouts in the whole country. And if I'm a leader of a team and I'm growing a team, how do I go attract talent to my team, Melanie?
Well, first of all, you have to know what is the value of your team. right? What is the value of working with you? And I have so many agents that come to me and say, well, what are you hearing? Because I know you talk to a lot of teams. What are they charging for splits? And I'm like, well, number one, what is your value? Tell me what your value is. And I heard Gary Keller say once, like there's this direct, like what you charge to be on your team is a direct reflection of what your value is. And I think a big mistake that agents make is they just do what other people are doing, but they don't know the why behind it. So like, hey, if you have an ISA or you're getting leads for your team, you can charge that. But if you're not, and that agent is basically just working on your team and you're sharing advertising or whatever, that's not the same commission structure, right? First of all, what's your value, right? And then you align yourself with everybody around you and you let them know, hey, I'm looking for talent. And there's nothing better than, like, I love it. I send people to teams that I work with all the time. Anytime I meet talent, I say, you have two options to come to Keller Williams. You can join a team or you can be on the coaching team. And here's what they are. What do you think sounds best? Hey, if you don't know, I'll give you 30 days to decide, because it's about putting you in the right seat on the right bus. Right. So somebody that's looking for talent wants to go, number one, align yourself with your leadership who's meeting a lot of talent. Have your own value. Know what your value is. Know what you're looking for. Set the bar. It's not a numbers game. It's not about having 20 people on your team. I was interviewing Tim Heil, who's, he's amazing. If you haven't heard of who that is in Austin, Texas, his team will do $1 billion in close, just under $1 billion in close volume this year, 22 million in GCI.
Wow.
And he attributes a lot of his success to the people he's hired.
Now, I remember when Tim Heil, it was his very first year at Coaching Skills Camp, when somebody suggested that he go, and I think it was his first year in real estate. And it was like in 2011 or 2012, something like that. And I remember looking at that young kid going, he's really smart. Oh, yeah. Something good is going to come out of this one.
Right. Well, and he hasn't sold the house in 8 years, right? Like, I mean, when I moved to Austin, he was a year and a half in, and now he just would plug in, but he got the right talent. And when he brought Matt Patulski on his team, and Matt said, you know what, Tim, if you make my world big enough within your world, why would I ever leave? Right? Because I think a lot of people that have their own teams are afraid to pour into others because they think they're going to train them and then they're going to leave. Well, they only leave in the absence of value. And if you create such an environment within your world, the magic's going to happen. Your world's going to get bigger. And when you make room for them and create the next opportunity for them, that's where the magic happens. So I think number one, you got to know your value. You have to have great relationships with people around you and be very clear on what you're looking for. But he said that one hire or 5 great hires is way better than 200 people that aren't the right people. I think it's 80 people, you scaled down to 20, and then now they built with the right people and they're selling more real estate than ever.
Are you seeing teams coming more into standards? And what I mean by that is some of the coaching clients that I'm working with, they seem to be like friend collectors or body collectors. And I'm really, one of my big things in coaching them is, what are the standards for your team members? For me personally, a standard is if you're not really committed to doing 36 deals a year, we're not even going to have a conversation. And some team leads are really nervous to go put in a standard like that, Melanie, because they're like, well, nobody will come work for me or whatever. And to me, it's a simple math, right? You want to go up 100 deals? Great. Then go hire 3 at 36.
Exactly. Well, and the problem again comes back to confidence, right? The confidence that team believes that in their environment, that person would be capable, the right person would be capable to close 3 deals a month at 36, right? That's just a natural. So having a standard, I think, is a really good thing. And I think it's the 30, 60, 90, right? You don't expect the same thing in the 30, 60, 90 days of them being on your team. But after 90 days, man, we're in business, we're rocking and rolling. And then it's not like if they have a month where they don't hit the 3, you fire them. It's a conversation where, again, you can say, well, let's talk about where the gap is. Because I made a promise to you that you're going to do 36 deals minimum. So we're in this together. But it takes both of us, right? And so especially for the teams where there's a cost per person, because a lot of times on teams, there's a cost for each person on the team. That's an even higher standard.
Yeah, and the team leader is paying the ISA, and they're paying for Boomtown, or they're paying for Cinch, I mean, a lot of people don't understand. I mean, these teams, I mean, it costs anywhere from 15 to 100,000 a month just in expenses before the owner makes a penny.
Right. Exactly.
So, I mean, we have a lot of risk as the team leads, because if nobody sells that month, guess what? We still have to pay the bills.
Yeah, it's true.
So,
You know what I think, Shannon, is almost even more important than, or what's the better tracking than the closed, is the activity, right? Is like, if they're not open about tracking and all that, like create a system around it so that you can be seeing how many contacts have you made, how many appointments do you go on, or whatever, so you can find and help fine tune that. And if they're doing the activity, then it's just a conversion question, right? Or whatever. But it's like, yeah, too many people just will put a standard out there. It's 3 a month, but then they don't do anything around that to support them. So, but again, to me, that comes down to value. And the best teams are the ones that are really invested in the people on their team being successful and making money and having the life that they're looking to have.
Coaching them on a regular basis and helping them create wealth.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is such a big thing. Parting thoughts from you as one of the best leaders that I've known forever and ever and ever. Like, what leadership lesson or what thoughts about leadership would you that you would leave with agents leading teams?
You know,
not that I don't prepare you for this stuff.
Yeah, that's good. No, that's good. I'm not, this is all just off the top of the head of what's today's Melanie's thing for the day. I just think it comes down to relationships and staying humble, right? Staying learning based. So the teams, when you're building your empire and you're attracting people, like, you never arrive, like you're never done growing, you're never done learning. And so there's always somebody that you can learn from, but don't compare yourself to them. And I see that a lot. Like, I got a text this morning from one of our top agents, and she really wanted to meet with another top agent. She knew I'm like the connector. And so they had a breakfast, and she said, this is exactly what I needed to hear, right? Be the connector and reach out to the people, whoever your leader are, who's leading your office. If they're connected to people, ask them, but reach out and connect with like-minded people that are ahead of you. Surround yourself with people that are, 5 steps ahead of you or 2 steps ahead of you, because sometimes it's just a little tweaking that you need to make that next breakthrough. And honestly, you need to be checking your net profit, because a lot of teams get skewed by the GCI and they think they're doing well and they're not making any money. And I've interviewed many people where they're like, on paper, it looked like we were having the best year ever. But at the end of the day, the net was not good and my family was going backwards and they're getting divorced over whatever. Taking care of you as the rainmaker matters a lot. It's just like with the family, the mom and dad, you have to take care of yourself too and your own health. Well, you as the rainmaker, you are the parent or you are the leader for those people, and you lead by example. So when you give yourself permission to have a healthy income, to be spent, thinking about your own personal wealth and buying properties and teaching others to do the same, you're role modeling the behavior. So don't forget to take care of yourself while you're taking care of others, because you're giving them permission to do the same. And I think that is something that the best leaders, I think, really live a full life, lead by example, and don't get into that burnout. Like, it's E to P, what's missing in my life, a person or a system. And a lot of times the top people, it's time, what they want back, right? And so how do you get your time back? You hire another person, whatever it is, but take care of yourself first, and then you can take care of others and lead them.
That was beautiful. Thank you, Melanie. I look forward to talking to you again soon. And I know that we're going to continue having great conversations. I so appreciate your time today. Everybody, please put some comments in here of questions or anything that you have for Melanie, and we'll be dipping in and out of the group. Have a fantastic day, GSD.
Thank you.